This is The Philanthropy Show, connecting and inspiring philanthropy.
Welcome to The Philanthropy Show. I'm your host, Luann Saraga Walters. Our topic today is a rather big one. What role does a school play in a child's life, or in the lives of that child's family, or in the community in which it serves? Big topic and a big project going on right here in Tampa Bay with the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood of Promise. Our guests today happen to be heavily invested, extremely coordinated because it is such a big project, and I believe we're just about to start moving this forward with going from an elementary school into a community school. So let me introduce our guests. Directly to my right, we have Jacque Leeks. She is the Vice Chair and also a parent of the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood of Promise. And Julie Scardino to her right, Principal of Sulphur Springs Elementary School, Sulphur Springs K-8 Community School, which is what it's transitioning into, yes. Right? And then Sheff Crowder, President of the Conn Foundation, also heavily invested and involved with the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood of Promise. So welcome, you three.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
You know, when Sheff and I were initially talking about the SSNOP, the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood, it's such a vast topic. So we really wanted to kind of narrow it down. What you've done is, in essence, taken a lot of facets of a very large wheel. You're talking about how a community interacts with itself. But specifically today, go about the community school. So let's start off with a little bit of background and how you each came to play a role in this. And Sheff, I'm going to start with you.
So we started funding in Sulphur Springs years ago, got very interested in the Neighborhood of Promise concept, which we'll talk more about later, and then through that, of course, got very involved with the school. So we got in there through our interest as a funder as the Conn Foundation.
And Julie, you're principal.
Yes, I'm a principal at Sulphur Springs. This is my 4th year, just finished my 4th year, so I'm going into my 5th year at Sulphur Springs. And I taught there for 7 years, many years ago. And so I just love Sulphur Springs, and so I'm very passionate about this transition because I know it's what we need to take the school to the next level.
And I actually have several connectors to the school. I work with Devereaux Kids as a community facilitator and a youth facilitator, and we do programming at the school through the YMCA.
Okay.
But I'm also a resident of Sulphur Springs, 4th generation, and I'm also alumni of Sulphur Springs, so I'm very interested in making sure that this works for our community.
Well, let's set this up a little bit because our audience is obviously across the country, and while we're in Tampa Bay, we may be a little bit more familiar, but talk to what is the concern in Sulphur Springs right now, and maybe we can start with you, Jacque, since you are 4th generation. Wow.
Yes, I am. One of the biggest concerns is that our students aren't, education-wise, they aren't prepared to succeed in middle and high school, and then, of course, going into the real world. So we want to make sure that they're getting a quality education and that we're investing in them so that when they come out, they're productive citizens and to give back to the community eventually.
This is probably very exciting and also due time for coming forward for you.
Actually, it's more like a revitalization because
Awesome.
when I went to school at Sulphur Springs, you have so many success stories, and we know that promise is still there.
Well, that happens within communities. We see the transitioning, the ebb and flow, and so now we're coming back in. So, Sheff, explain a little bit in very broad terms, if we can, about the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood of Promise and what that project entails.
Sure. Well, there's really 3 primary initiatives. We want to promote resident leadership. We know for something to be successful, the residents have to be involved and part of the solutions. Secondly is in partnership with the school district, having a very strong school and educational pipeline. And then the third is a community initiative where we're trying to address economic stability around jobs and housing.
It's a lot to undertake.
It is.
So, Julie, speak to that aspect from the elementary school standpoint. What have you seen, and what are you hoping to transition to? And Jacque had mentioned a little bit about having the students be prepared for middle school and high school.
Right, so we have a lot of challenges at the school because of the things that Sheff and Jacque are talking about. There's a lot of transition and a lot of transiency, and so that presents challenges.
Because families are moving in and out?
They are, and so it could be because of a change of job. It could be because poor housing, and they're trying to find better housing. So there's lots of outside circumstances that causes families to have to move, and because of that, then the school has this kind of rotating door of families in and out.
So we actually track that, and we find that with our fifth graders, on average, they're going to 3 different elementary schools
Oh my
and are only
gosh.
at Sulphur Springs 2 years.
Now, that was not the case when you were in school.
No, and actually, that when we talked about the community school concept, I said to Sheff, to some people it may seem foreign, but to me, I went to Sulphur Springs for 8 years because we did Head Start, kindergarten, and 1st through 6th grade. So it helped because we had already built this foundation. We were very comfortable. We were ready for the next step. So
Well, and you're talking about, too, the comfort, the students, you're familiar with your fellow students, you get comfortable with the curriculum or the style of teaching, the teachers that you see, the administrators that you see. I can't imagine going to 3 different schools for elementary school.
Right. So because of all of that turnover, that impacts the adults too, because we have teacher turnover as well. So it's just kind of like this cycle. So it's our hope that through this community school concept, we can kind of stabilize all of those components to get back to that school that Jacque is referring to, where it was that true community and people stayed for many, many years and got their education in one place. And we know that that's the key.
How is this different than a Head Start K through 6 versus community school K through 8, or is it similar?
Well, I think as we expand it for the whole program, Head Start through 8th grade, and we continue to bring in the community resources that Jacque and Sheff were talking about, we're kind of bringing the full services to the school, to the families, because we know that there sometimes are issues that prevent parents from being able to get places. Transportation could be one, for example. So if something that a family needs is across town, we can bring that service to the school for the families or to the community. So that's the difference with the community school concept, is we kind of wrap our arms around the whole situation, the whole child, the whole family, to bring the resources that they need to help the families.
Louie, I think to also give a context is, over the last 3 years, unweighted, the school has gone from an F to a C. So we're seeing progress at the elementary level. But then what was happening is kids were graduating and having to go to 2 different middle schools, same neighborhood, but 2 different middle schools. And unfortunately, those were 2 of the toughest middle schools in Hillsborough County. So part of it was just trying to address the current reality of where kids were going to school. So now we'll have a neighborhood-based school, Head Start through 8th grade, to get them ready for high school.
And it'll be a much smaller school too. Like, for example, with 6th grade coming in, we only have 72 students right now. We're predicting it might stay around 72, 75. So when it's at full capacity and we have about 250 to 300 students, that's much smaller than a child going to a middle school that maybe has 800 students or 1,000. So just for the sheer size of it, we're able to accomplish so much more, academically with the students and meeting their
and speak
needs.
to that a little bit more too. So some of the additional benefits of extending it and becoming more of that community-centric
Right.
type school.
Right, so we're able to maintain smaller class sizes. We're predicting we'll have about 15, 16 students in the class when we open now in August, as opposed to traditional middle school ratios of 22 to 25 students in a class. So we're trying to, hire great teachers, do lots of training to get them ready, and then keep class sizes small. We've also built in some tutorial and enrichment times into our daily schedule so that teachers have the ability to kind of regroup students based on those needs that they're seeing. And if we're seeing, students that we really need to be enriching and pushing and challenging, we can move those students up.
Are you going to need to hire additional faculty?
Staff, yes. Yeah, so we hired a whole new 6th grade team, because that's a whole new department. Hired another assistant principal to manage the middle school piece. We're getting a partnership coordinator who's going to kind of help between the school and the community piece. So that it did add some new positions.
This is exciting. So
Yes.
it's already time for us to take our first break. But when we come back, I want to talk really about what you talked about, the whole child. Not just from the educational standpoint. I think sometimes we tend to look at, well, they're going to school, so that's all the school deals with. But this community school is really about that whole child and the community involvement. And how have you put these structures in place to be able to accomplish that, which is a big task. So we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more on The Philanthropy Show.
This show sponsored in part by
My Paper Pusher. Consider it done.
Follow The Philanthropy Show on Facebook for behind-the-scenes action, polls, and commentary.
Welcome back to The Philanthropy Show. We're talking today about a very big idea, a very big project that is happening right here in Sulphur Springs in the Tampa Bay area in Florida. And it is about how a school can reach the whole child, not just from an educational standpoint, but the whole child, the community. This is what the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood of Promise is doing with the Sulphur Springs Elementary School, which is in the conversion process to a K-8
K-8
community school. So let's talk about what that means, that whole child aspect as opposed to the educational aspect alone. What does that look like?
So at the school level, it looks like building a responsible citizen, a student leader. So we're making sure that the child has all of those foundations so they can be successful in life.
Via programming, via...
Programming, people, mentoring, volunteerism, service learning. We're trying to get students opportunities to go out into the community and give back, to be community leaders themselves, to get opportunities to be exposed to other groups.
That's a lot of partnerships you've had to set up to get in place.
And a lot of it is things that we're transitioning to start beginning to do. So student leadership is one thing that we're really going to be getting into this year. And we've created some time in our schedule to allow students to have like interest clubs where they can get involved in some leadership activities. And through those clubs, it's our hope that then they'll go back into the community and be able to give back in some type of a way. So one example is like an animal care club. Well, maybe they'll be doing something with the Humane Society or going to an elderly home to maybe read. So just any types of different things that we can do to get kids out, they give back, and then they see that there's a big world out there, and we want them to have opportunities.
So for the whole child focus, in addition to what's happening during the school day, there's a whole after school and summer initiative. And so we know from research that in getting kids caught up, you've got to extend the day and extend the school year. Well, we're able to do that through our social service partners who provide those programs.
Which would be, explain that a little bit when you say social service partners. So it's like Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs?
Sure. Right. So for the community school, the on-site after-school provider is the YMCA, and they serve over 200 kids a day, as well as over 200 kids during the summer. Their chief academic officer is Julie, so that we're aligning the academic focus of the after-school program with what's happening at the school. But in addition to that, there's all kind of enrichment activities and leadership activities as well.
Tell me about your child. Do you have a son, daughter?
No, I have children that have graduated from Hillary County, but I have a lot of nieces and nephews who have a really
that are
good family.
in right now.
Yes.
What are you hoping to see for them with this transition?
I'm hoping, first of all, to build that classroom caring community feel of, I know my teacher knows me, my teacher knows my family, my teacher knows what I'm involved in beyond the academic day. And so that my after school, my during school, my home life begins to be in sync. So I think that's really important because that's what we grew up with, and it worked, that my teacher knew what was going on at home if something happened in the house. And not in a way that I'm getting in your family's business, but that I care that, you've been absent for 2 days. Is everything okay? How can we help? And being able to have those supports so that the child becomes that caring citizen, not just beyond the walls. And so, because if I feel good after school and at home, and then I become that whole student. So that's that holistic approach she's talking about, of knowing that child inside and out. And sometimes that's hard because teachers have so much to do.
You brought up that point. There's kind of a fine line too about when is it knowledge about what's going on in the child's life to know if there's a problem academically that maybe this is impacting that versus, like you said, getting in the family's business. Is there additional training that will need to happen, or are there structures in place? How do you achieve that?
We talk with teachers a lot. We do a lot of pre-service before the kids return, and we talk about what it means to make connections with students and build those relationships. If you don't have a sound relationship with that child and with the family, you may not have success academically. The child is not going to respond to you and to work for you if they don't think you care about them. And so really we impress that upon our teachers that if you want to teach at this school, you have to care about the kids, you have to care about them as people, you have to want to get to know them as individuals and not just see them as a student in your classroom.
Yeah, as
a person.
an A or B
Correct.
or D.
Correct. So it's really all about the relationships from day one. And even this year, I'm going to have the teachers, we're going to go out into the community and do some community walks. We might even do home visits just to really reach out and get to know the parents so that they know that we care.
So we talk about a whole child focus, but it's really about a whole family and a whole neighborhood focus. One of the things, there's been a growing interest and work with the parents, but we're starting a new group called the Student Success Squad, and that is about engaging the parents in an even deeper way in their own child's education. So having that kind of parental focus,
Excellent.
but in addition to that, we know we've got to address the family's needs around economic stability. So that's why the Housing and the Jobs Initiative and all of that helps to create a neighborhood that can support that child in their educational attainment.
Well, and in essence, it's really kind of educating the parents too toward that end of the holistic community. This is,
Well, I think what's novel about this is so often when you look around the county and around the country, when you see school or neighborhood reform, so often it is moving the poor people in that neighborhood or that school out. And what our vision is to create a neighborhood and a school where you have working and middle income families.
I like that. How many partners do you have engaged in this project?
So through the Neighborhood of Promise, there are approximately 45 social service agencies and over 20 funders that are involved.
Wow. What has been the setup time to get, now we were talking before the show, and this conversion process is actually beginning, coming up soon, August of 2015, and taking how long? So how long did it take to get everything in place with the planning? What is the estimated conversion timeline?
Well, it got board approved earlier this year. So this has just been the past few months that we've been planning for the sixth graders. And then the conversion timeline is 3 years. So we're adding sixth grade now, and then seventh grade the following year, and eighth grade the third year.
That's excellent. Was it a difficult one for the board to pass, or was it kind of like a no-brainer?
Well, Sheff was there, but we did a lot of working before it was actual time for the board, making sure that they understood what was the vision, what would we have community support. We had a community meeting before it even went to the school board to make sure that we had community buy-in.
That's excellent.
And to get the community's voice. So
That's
I think
huge.
that was
How
big.
was the community's response then?
It was
when you were
excellent.
presenting? Yeah.
It was really a great turnout, and it wasn't just a meeting where it was two. It was a good representation of what our community looks like, and really getting those questions answered, because of course there is some concern. So we wanted to make sure that those questions were answered first before we went to the district for them to vote on it. So.
Luann, I think the best response to that is, how many fifth graders did you have this year?
65.
And how many will be sixth graders next year?
All 65.
All 65.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That is great. Wow.
Now the district did provide families choice. So if they want to go to Van Buren or Sly, which were the two other middle schools where they may have older siblings, they can do that. But obviously, the majority of them are staying at the school.
Is this happening anywhere? I mean, did you have a model that you could replicate from anywhere else in the country? Did you have something?
Well, then that's what I was going to say. Yes, this got approved in February, but prior to that, we did a lot of research around different models and around different strategies. And we looked at charter schools, we looked at private schools, we looked at community schools, and we also looked at different initiatives like, should it be gender specific? Should it be a year-round school? So we looked at all of those things, and then also through negotiation with the district, tried to figure out what worked best within the context of our district and our schools.
Well, I love the synergy of this. I love how many players there are, from the partners that you have to the academics, the staff, the faculty, the board members, the parents, the community. Everything is coming together and really, in a really holistic is the only way that we can describe it, and it's very complete. So it's encouraging to see communities come together at this level as well.
One of the important innovations to highlight for Hillsborough County is this is the first community school that we've had in Hillsborough County. And what's, I think, significant about a community school is you have resident leadership, school leadership, and community leadership together trying to figure out how to do this. And we know for this to be successful, we've got to involve the residents, we've got to involve community resources in a meaningful way. And so I think that's huge as we go forward. I think there's a great place for charter schools and private schools, but this is yet another model within the public school system of how you can have a public-private partnership.
Time for break number 2, but when we come back, I want to touch briefly on the challenges that you see coming forward, and what are the goals that you have for the immediate future with this. Great idea. Taking a break with the Philanthropy Show, but we'll be right back.
And now a word from our studio sponsor.
Hi, I'm Emily Benham, CEO of the Nonprofit Leadership Center, the studio sponsor for the Philanthropy Show. Today, I'd like to give you 2 tips on how you can engage your board members at your next board meeting. Sometimes nonprofit leaders feel like they don't want to ask trustees for their help in a board meeting setting, and yet we frequently hear that leaders are frustrated that their board members just aren't engaged. The truth is, just like in fundraising, that you have to ask them for your help when you need it. Give them something concrete and realistic that they can accomplish before your next board meeting and ask them to report back. Secondly, when you do ask for their help, be sure to give them options to participate. They could invite a prospect to have coffee and learn about your organization. They could speak about your organization to a civic club. They could ask someone for money. Not everyone will feel comfortable with every task, but if you give them a list of 3 things and ask them to pick one, you might be surprised with which one they pick. So remember to ask your board members for help when you need it and give them options to ensure your and their success. Good luck.
The Philanthropy Show is on demand every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at both thephilanthropyshow.com and YouTube/WatchMVVP TV.
Welcome back to the Philanthropy Show. So we're going to talk now a little bit about the challenges and the goals that you have for the community school. So let's start with the challenges, because it's always fun to end on the yes, but what do you see are some potential bumps or obstacles that might come up with this conversion process?
Well, I'll start. I think potential bumps is just getting the faith from the community that we are the best educational option for their child. When kids get to that middle school level, parents have, they have options from elementary, but a lot of times they exercise those options in middle school by choosing magnets and charters and choice. And so we want them to stay with us. And so we have to sell that though, and we have to walk the walk. So I think this is a real important year for us as the foundational year to show the community and to show the families that this is the best school for your child, and they will leave us totally prepared for high school and beyond.
And because Hillsborough County is an, what do you call that, an open, parents can choose?
Choice
It's a choice,
A
choice district.
Choice district, right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. You look like you were about to say
Well, I
something.
think 2 things. When you look at the district across the whole, where they have the most problems, it begins to show up in middle school. So by taking on a middle school, we're obviously taking on a big challenge, and also in a tough neighborhood. So how can we make that happen in Sulphur Springs?
And one of the challenges that the students are concerned about, because I also work with them during the summer through the City of Tampa Parks and Rec and through the Y, is having older kids mixed with younger kids, and so we don't. Our campus isn't complete yet. They're going to be, the district is going to be adding some facility to make us bigger. So we got to work with what we have. So that's really going to be a challenge that we're going to have to be very creative in making sure that middle schoolers feel like middle schoolers and elementary feel like elementary, and without having a cross where they feel intimidated by the older
Do you know what I
kids.
love though, Jackie, is what you're just saying is that you're listening to them. You're listening to them, so that's creating a foundation so that when something does happen, because things
It's gonna
happen,
happen.
then you have their trust because you're listening to them now as opposed to just pushing something forward. So, wow.
Well, and we highlighted 2 things earlier is, we still have the challenge of families moving in and out of the neighborhood. So we have to continue to address that if this is going to be successful. Only 40% of the residents are owner-occupied, and we'd love to see that go up to 60% because we think that would make a difference. So we've got to continue to address that. And then the other thing is you have kids that are coming into kindergarten not academically ready. So we're already starting behind, and we've got to work on getting them caught up.
Well, it'll be interesting to check in with you guys in a year with those challenges and see it now that in your first year and how that actually, some of them just maybe taking care of themselves and other things that you've learned in the growing process. So what are the goals, the immediate goals?
Well, safety is always number one.
Yes.
And a successful student, a successful child.
That's awesome. How do you measure a successful child?
Lots of ways.
Wow.
Lots of ways. There's involvement, extracurriculars, parents and families coming out to the school, getting engaged in programs and things, academics, of course.
Oh, that's cool. How can somebody find out more about the program?
Websites. We have school website
Okay.
through the Hillsborough County Public Schools. You can click on Sulphur Springs, and there's lots of information there
And
about
you
our
also
school.
have-
And then in addition to that, there's the Sulphur Springs Neighborhood of Promise website. And
Which
so
is?
SSNOP.org.
Okay.
And it talks about, of course, what we're doing in partnership with the school and all of our partners. You talk about identifying how do you understand success. We focus on 4 areas. Attendance, you got to learn to show up if you're going to be successful. Academic achievement, social emotional learning, and parent engagement. So for us, we've identified those 4 areas that if we can go deep, we think it will show up in the classroom.
Excellent.
And I think my overall goal is community buy-in. If we can get the majority of the community, one of the things I always tell Sheff and whoever I'm with is the schools that our children attend for middle school aren't considered our schools because they're outside of our boundary of our neighborhood. So if we get the community to buy in and become a part of the fiber of the school, it'll catch on fire, and it will get, not literal fire, but it becomes that we're taking care of our school because we want to see.
Well,
it
there's
succeed.
passion. You're talking about community passion, passion around the development of the child.
Right.
Which that any parent who can see that happen, that's a reward in itself.
Right.
Wow. Well, thank you 3 for doing what you're doing with that. I'm going to transition us. I'm going to conversion us into our Truth or Care segment, which is why you do what you do, your heart's definition of philanthropy. And I'll let you decide who goes, or we can use the fickle finger of fate.
Let's say Sheff.
Her fickle finger.
So I've been at the Conn Foundation for over 20 years now, and a big part of our discussion is around what are community investments that are strategic, innovative, systemic, and also model collective impact. And so all of those things are important, and that's why this is such an important investment to us, is we feel it embodies all of those things.
Well, that's cool. Why are you personally employed with a foundation?
Because I believe in all those things that I just said. I've been involved in community work ever since high school, and have just always had a heart for our inner city in particular, and have always worked in inner city initiatives.
And Sheff is very much a leader in the Tampa Bay area, and one of those guys that you always want to have in your corner in the nonprofit community because he's passionate and he's a huge advocate for all things nonprofit. So thank you for all the work that you've done and do on a daily basis.
Thank you.
So Julie, your truth or care?
Well, I'm a teacher at heart. I love teaching, and education is my passion. And so I do what I do because I want to make a difference in the lives of the students that we serve in Sulphur Springs. And I want to see every single child in Sulphur Springs rise to the success that we know they all have the potential to do. So that's what keeps me going. That's what gets me up in the morning. That's what keeps me up at night sometimes, is brainstorming what to do. But I'm so passionate about making sure the kids have success. And I think also because it was my very first job out of college, very young, many years ago, and I stayed there, and I only left to become an administrator. So it was a place where I wanted to spend my career. I didn't know I was going to be coming back as principal, but it's just been full circle for me. So I really have a vested interest in making sure that we build a successful child.
That's cool. And it's neat for you to be able to see the former students that you had also now as
And they come back.
members. Yeah.
Oh, they come back, and some of them are parents now, and they walk in to register their child, and they'll look at me and they'll say, "I know you. You were my teacher." And that's
No grandparents
great.
yet?
No, not that old yet. So it's great.
That's awesome, Julie. Jackie.
So I do what I do because I'm just a servant at heart. I feel like I was created to give back, and not in a way, I always say either my time, my talent, or my treasure, because you can invest in someone and it'll manifest itself maybe years from now. So I truly believe in some plant, some water, but ultimately the increase comes from a greater source. So I really use that when I'm pouring into children, and I'm over my hours of work, but I'm still working because it's bigger than that. People say, well, my son's graduated from college, my daughter's in college, but I have other children that are beyond just the ones that are connected to me by the blood. So it's funny because I do a group girls circle at the school, and by the end, I'm everybody's Auntie Jackie. So, so I have all of these, and they're like, "That's your niece," and everybody's my family.
That's
so.
awesome. I can feel that servant in you,
Yeah.
though. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming on the show.
Just drive through the neighborhood with Jackie, and
Yeah.
everybody's saying, "Hi, Jackie."
Yeah.
That's fun. Well, I want to thank you 3 for coming on the
Thank
show.
you.
Really
Yes.
appreciate
Thank
you being
you.
here with us, and
Yes,
thank you for what you're
having us.
doing.
Absolutely.
So we do want to check back with you and see how you're going, and report on all those wonderful successes that I'm sure that you're going to have.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So that does it for today's The Philanthropy Show. Be sure to join us online, thephilanthropyshow.com, and every Monday at 4 o'clock for a new show. See you later.
Have an idea for the Philanthropy Show? Contact us via our website or email us at tps@myvideovoice.com.